Most businesses fail not because the idea are bad, but because they don't know how to beat their competitors. No matter what idea you have or what industry you're stepping into, you will always be competing against others. And in most cases, you're up against companies that are bigger, that have a better reputation, better customer results, and a stronger brand with an audience that trusts them. And if you want to escape the competition and really build something that stands out, you need to stop fighting for a space in crowded markets and instead start looking for untapped opportunities, otherwise known as a blue ocean. Because if you don't, you'll be trapped pouring time and money and energy into businesses that can't pay the bills. You'll be struggling to convince customers why they should pick your product over others, and you might even find yourself lowering your prices, over-delivering, burning out, just to scrape by. And this is the moment that you might start believing that success is only for the lucky ones, that only those with deep pockets, powerful connections, and a head start can actually win, and that the whole game might actually be rigged against you. But it's not. You just need a better strategy. And today I'm going to break down the key principles to find a blue ocean regardless of how competitive your market, niche, or industry might be. So that way you can thrive without needing to constantly fight for attention. And by the end of this video, you know exactly how to spot untapped blue ocean opportunities, just like I was able to do last year, where I launched a brand new education company from zero to just under $500,000 in revenue in 8 months. And I didn't even have a product built before I sold it. And now I make somewhere consistently between $20,000 to $30,000 a month. But the best part is that all this is possible even if you don't have a proven track record. So let's get started. So the first thing is stick to what you already know, because when you enter an industry that you're already familiar with, it becomes that much easier to actually spot where the blue oceans might be. And more importantly, how you can leverage your existing experience to be able to tap into these and get all the money that's inside of them. You see, the secret to finding blue oceans in industries you already know is you have to look back on your prior experience, because you're going to know things about how your customers think, how the market operates, and the different trends that are going to make it that much easier for you to know exactly where the need might be, exactly what sort of things that customers in your industry are looking for. For example, in my industry, sales consulting, well, I had a background as a high-ticket closer, and I had spent plenty of time doing the typical song and dance of a high-ticket closer, where I'm working for some large-off company and I'm just closing deals and making money on a commission-only basis. But I realized that there comes a point that you just don't want to do this cycle forever. You eventually want to break free and become something else. And that's why I became a consultant originally. And this is something that people took an interest in, but I also just didn't know existed until I had done it. And this is where there was a huge opportunity, because not only was I the only one that had had this experience and was thinking this way, but there were dozens of other people who were also wanting to find something that came next. They wanted to use their existing experience to be able to make money without needing to do the same thing that everybody else was. And the same way that this point, sticking to what you know, allows you to spot blue ocean opportunities, that's the exact same thing that I did, not only to break out of what I was doing, but also to create a business showing others how to do what I had done. But the most important part about sticking to what you know is the time savings. You will just be able to move at maybe 2 to 10 times the speed that someone who doesn't know anything about your industry will, because you're already familiar with the landscape. Imagine if I dropped you on a desert island that you'd never been on before. Well, it would take you a while to know exactly how to make fresh water, where the fruit lies, you know, the mountains, the ins and the outs. But if I dropped you on an island that you'd already been familiar with, well, it wouldn't take you long at all. You'd feel like home. And that's exactly the case when it comes to the game of war that is business. You want to fight on lands that you already know, so you have that home field advantage. But better yet, it might allow you to spot opportunities that other people otherwise might just miss. Which brings me into point number 2, avoid unfamiliar markets. On the other hand, while sticking to some place that you already know gives you a huge advantage, you also want to avoid going too far into the unknown. While sticking to industries that you already know gives you a really large advantage, on the converse, you want to avoid venturing too far into the unknown, because this can often be a recipe for disaster. Without prior knowledge, you're going to find yourself burning more time and more money to get a result that someone else might be able to get in maybe half the time, just like I explained before. But the real reason why you're going to lose time and effort and energy is because you don't have the experience or the specific knowledge to even know what your customers think, how they transact, how the landscape works. I'll give you a prime example for my own business, my most recent one. So I've been doing this sales consulting where I partner with businesses and establish remote sales teams for around 2 years now. And I have my own education program where I show salespeople how to do the exact same thing. Now, coming to the side where I provide that service. I had only been able to get customers through word of mouth, through referral, through my network. And that's where people who knew about me, the work that I had done, would eventually bring customers to me, and they would want to partner, and I get to run and lead their sales team, and all was fine and dandy. But that's when I got the idea to want to venture into the unknown. Now, across all my customers, I spotted a really blue ocean opportunity in this industry that was IT, information technology. But not IT as in like, hey, you're providing the services, but IT as education. Because all the type of companies that I had worked for had been education, coaching, consulting, and some digital services. But I knew that there was this huge gold rush, which was showing people how to get into IT. Not only IT, but coding, software, cybersecurity, anything in the technical skills space. So I decided to say, hey, well, I'm good at business. Why don't I build an ad campaign? And let me try to get business owners that are in the IT space to come partner with me, and I do the sales consulting for them. And what happened was it just didn't work. And the reason being was because my ads made completely no sense to my target market because I had no understanding of how the industry actually worked. I was trying to get people who ran IT boot camps or coding boot camps, show people how to become a software programmer. But I didn't even know the difference between programming and coding. That's like knowing the difference between ice and water for that industry. And so for me to enter as this guy that just had an idea but no practical understanding, it just led to there being no resonance. My cost per sales call was $562, which is 10 times more what any reasonable business owner should be paying for a qualified sales call. So I abruptly brought an end to that because I was burning my time and I was burning my money on my advertising. I spent probably $2,500 trying to break into this space. Now the big lesson to be learned in this is my second bet, where I changed up my messaging and went after the industry that I already knew, well, I got my sales calls down to $50 and I got my first client within my first $2,000 of spend, which isn't unreasonable considering that they're a $15K client for me. So right there I was at damn near a 7x ROAS. You see how such a subtle shift can make all the difference in your outcome? Change your input, change your output. Now, would it be possible for me to break into this market? Absolutely. But I didn't have the pockets deep enough or the patience long enough to be able to figure it out. By the time I would have, there probably would have been multiple six figures of revenue in an industry that I was already familiar with that I just gave to a competitor because I decided to compete in the wrong direction. So that's why it's so much easier to just stick to the industries and spaces that you already understand and avoid unfamiliar markets. Now, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't approach them or attempt it from time to time. I definitely think you should experiment, but don't hedge your bets on doing something new and expecting it to work unless you've done it before. Now let's talk about the third way to break into blue ocean markets. Now this one's absolutely killer. This is one of the biggest breakthroughs that I actually had in 2023, which is to copy market leaders. Hear me out. You don't always need to reinvent the flywheel. Sometimes you just need to build something that is just 3% better than what the next guy is. There's actually a study or a quote, I forgot exactly who it came from, but as long as you make something that's 3% better than the existing product in the market, you've actually created value to a point to where you deserve to have customers and you deserve to compete. But it's not always about copying competitors for copying sake, but it's about understanding what is working. It's about understanding what is it about their existing product, and I know I've drawn a human being here, but what is it about this existing product that people just seem to like? What is it that, what are the features that people seem to find important? What about this meets the demand? What about this is drawing clicks? And you should use that as inspiration to springboard your business, because if you can copy what makes one product very attractive, or the features that are very attractive to your product where you're providing a different experience, well, you can now compete. For example, people might like electric cars because they get from point A to point B very fast. Being fast is the core feature that people care about. It might not be the style, it might not be the wheels, and this is where, well, if you create another fast electric car, well, 50% of that market goes to you, and 50% of that market goes to them, as opposed to 100% of it going to them. And so that's where if you look at what people care about, you can use that to inspire or drive the innovation for your product, allowing you to have an easier entryway. Now, let's talk about the fourth way that you can break into blue ocean markets or find a blue ocean markets, which is to fill voids from market leaders. And what I mean by this is that sometimes the largest companies in the industry will have product segments or product lines that they just completely abandon because it's no longer worth their effort or energy. And what this does is it creates an opening for someone like yourself to come in and fill. It calls an opening that we could also call a blue ocean market. A prime example of this is when NVIDIA recently created the new chip for producing AI products. Now, I can't recall the specific name of the chip, but these chips were hot and they were in demand. Every Fortune 500 company wanted to have one. And now NVIDIA, one thing that they did to stay really competitive was they were only selling these chips to the United States of America. They weren't selling them to the rest of the world. Now they used to, but that's when they realized that they could make more money just keeping it to the US of A as opposed to all the other countries. And so they stopped manufacturing, or they stopped making it easier for you to buy it from NVIDIA directly. But this is where a huge void opened up for many suppliers or many businesses to be able to set up shop and start buying these chips in the United States and start exporting them off to other countries. But this is when a huge void opened up for businesses that were in the United States to start buying these chips and selling them off to other countries at a really high premium. Now, this is called filling the void that market leaders leave behind. Instead of that company just setting up their own distributions with other countries and profiting as if they normally would, because they shut those down or closed them off, there was a need that was there that someone else could step in and fill and make millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars doing so. And there's anecdotes, I can't tell you them exactly, but there are suppliers and distributors that are doing well over $10 to $20 million a year selling these $54,000 AI chips at maybe a $60,000 to $70,000 premium off to countries overseas that would like to have access to them. This is actually part of the controversy that fueled DeepSeek. They were wondering how China got access to, NVIDIA's most recent chips. Well, it was because of these resellers. Now, I want to stick to what I know to be factually true, not anecdotally to be true, but this also played out in my industry. One of my market leaders, someone who competes with me directly, had decided to buy a bunch of other companies and put his focus elsewhere on growing his 3 other businesses, as opposed to the main one that we were all kind of trying to compete against. And as a result of this, his focus started to go into his other businesses. This started causing his main company to shrink in revenue and open up market share for people like myself to step in, and like my good friend who's a competitor of mine, and a couple other people who are doing the same thing. Now, since then, he's stepped back and he's brought this company back up to life, but this is what allowed my good friend, before I stepped into the industry, to come in and compete and start making even upwards of $400,000 a month in just straight cash from people that were no longer buying this competitor's product. But this is also why it's important to stick to industries that you already know, because you won't be able to see these opportunities and you won't be able to step into them and fill them. I have another colleague who, when ERC, employee retention credits, became available, made like $300 million in a couple of years just exploiting the opportunity that was ERCs to enterprise companies, because there was a need that was there. But once that legislation changed, the business dried up. But once an opportunity presents itself, whether it's filling a void or a new opportunity or a change in legislation, if you're familiar with the industry, you'll know how to attack it with vigor. All right, now let's go into the 5th way that you can get into blue ocean markets, which is going to be creating a market. Now, this is a bold move, but it's incredibly rewarding if you can do it properly. Just look at Airbnb. Before they came along, there was nobody that was offering to stay in a stranger's house for rent as opposed to staying in a hotel. It just was not common practice. But once they were able to change society's behavior and make that opportunity, they became an explosive, massive, multi-billion-dollar company. But the key was that they created a whole new market for short-term rentals that didn't exist prior. When nobody else is solving a problem the way that you solve it, your solution is the only one that exists, and you can create a market around it. But it's often hard because you have to deal with the fact that consumers or customers might not want to use your type of solution. It might be that your solution's bad, they just don't want to use it. For example, the inhaler. Now, the inhaler for someone who has asthma makes sense. It works because it's become common practice. But when it came out at first, it was a new product. There's going to be skeptics. It's the same thing with wireless AirPods, or when Apple got rid of the headphone jack on the iPhone. They created a new market for wireless earbuds, but consumer behavior and understanding hadn't matured to the point where it was just common practice to use Bluetooth earbuds. It made people really uncomfortable. They really liked the comfort and security of wired. Same thing when they removed the home button. And this is something that you'll deal with when you're creating a market. If you have a new product that's really niche or really unique, one of the best ways to do this is through self-liquidating offers, where you sell an intro to your product at a really low price point, maybe anywhere up to $97, which is kind of the upper end of an impulse purchase. You want to get a total average order value of maybe $250 for you to be break even and or profitable on your ads. And once you get a bunch of people who buy this, you now get a bunch of customers who are aware and like your product and like your solution. And if you do your job properly, maybe 10% of these people will actually move on to buying your full-fledged solution. I know a business that does this right now. They have a $97 front end and a $16,000 back end product, but people right out the gate won't just buy the $16,000 product. They don't have enough context or not comfortable with that solution. But after they buy the $97 $1,000, around 10% of them will rock up and buy this thing for $16K, and the business does multiple millions a year selling this or using this model. And so that's how you create a market. If you have a very complex or sophisticated product that is not commonly adopted, the industry that this business is in mergers and acquisitions. They teach people how to buy and sell companies. But the layman's consumer does not feel comfortable buying a company. There's been no part of their programming to that date that allows them to feel comfortable purchasing a business. Everyone's been taught you need to be an entrepreneur and start one. So they have to buy a little thing to understand and learn what mindsets they need to adopt to feel comfortable then going out and buying a business. That's when they'll then commit to the $16,000 mastermind that shows them how to do that. That's how you make markets when you have products that aren't commonly adopted or something that people might feel intimidated to do. It's an incredible strategy, but takes a lot of skill and grace to be able to execute. Now, the sixth way that you can break into a blue ocean market is you have to understand market leadership and revenue. What I mean by this, by leadership and revenue, is you have to ask yourself, has anybody actually made money here? Because very rarely are there instances where money exists that people haven't already tapped into and exploited. And a good way to tell if there's actually a viable market for what it is that you want to sell, because you don't want to go and create a market forever. Sure, you can do that, but that's a really hard way to do a business. I'd prefer to have a business that exists where there's a demand that is clear, there's an intent that's authentic, and people want what I have to offer. If every day, day out, I have to convince people with everything in me to buy my product, it's going to be so much harder to grow my business. Imagine having a crypto education company when crypto was blowing up. You didn't have to convince people to buy it. They just wanted to buy it and you would make money by default. And that's the same thing that you want to see. Is there a market? And the key to know if there is there should be a leader, preferably one leader. And the magic number that comes to my mind to see if a market's validity is $20 million. If there has not been a company that has made more than $20 million selling to your target audience or selling something similar to what you sell, there isn't actually much of an opportunity there. Now, if you can come in and make $20 million, you will create a market and people will come in behind you and start copying you and competing for what you have. Everything I talked about prior will get done to you. It will, without a shadow of a doubt. But if that doesn't exist, look to see if there's a leader there. Look to see if they've done 20 million in revenue. If they have, there's a viable market. If there's multiple people that have done 20 million in revenue, well, then you know for sure that there's actually an opportunity. It just might be a little bit harder for you to break in. So when I'm sizing up whether I wanted to go into specific spaces or industries, I'm going to look at how much money people are actually doing, and I'm going to use that to understand how competitive it is. Beauty in e-commerce, like beauty products in e-com, has got to be one of the hardest spaces to compete. The hardest spaces to compete. But there are plenty of companies that are doing 20 million plus. There's a world-class marketer out there named Peter Kell who was able to take his company to a couple 100,000 in sales per day, and didn't even impact the revenue of Maybelline or Dove or any of these other beauty companies that are out there. That's how much money is flowing through this space or this sector. Now, you want to become cognizant of that before you go ahead and set up shop, because otherwise you're going to be rowing against the stream as opposed to rowing with it. Now let's talk about point 7 to spotting blue ocean opportunities is connect with market leaders if there are any. This is what helped me take my business that I could only get customers from my network to paid ads, was this little shift right here, is connecting with a market leader. I had my friend who had miraculously made 400,000 in 1 month selling a product very similar to what I had that I probably could fulfill on better than him. Now, it wasn't until I spoke with him and learned a little bit about what he was doing that I really believed it was possible, and I decided to set up shop myself and compete with him. Now, we're good friends, we're in the same group chat, we share insights with each other all the time, we don't hold anything back. You know, there's enough money out there for both of us to exist. But if it wasn't for his insights and advice, it would have taken me probably twice the time to be able to break into this. Even though I already knew about it, all of the money is in the nuances. It's like the difference between the iPhone 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. Now, if you look at each phone next to each other year by year, there's not a big difference. But if you look at them over the course of 4 years, there's a very big jump. And that's the difference between my business and his. He's got that 3-year, 4-year jump on me, and that's why he's making all the money that he is. And so for him to just tell me do this, not that, because he's already tried it and it failed, it helps me move there quicker. But more importantly, understanding why the things that he does works is really what gives me a competitive edge, because then I can go and innovate and recreate my own ideas and be able to make money without feeling like I need to rip off his stuff verbatim. Now, this is why I feel like competition is really important. You don't want to copy your competitors exactly to the T. You want to understand why what they're doing is working and model them and compete against them in an authentic way that is true to yourself. Nobody likes it when you just verbatim swipe or rip somebody else's stuff. It just reeks of inauthenticity, and more importantly, your customers will spot it and not like it. They'll discredit you or they'll call you out on it. For example, my friend told me when he first launched his ads, he copied his his competitor too much, and he got told, hey, you look like the guy from Shein. Now, I won't say the competitor's name, but you look like influencer's name from Shein. You look like the, the made in Taiwan version of the actual person that he was copying. And so this is where you have to find enough of a spin or like an angle that you can put on it that is going to give you maybe a 15 to 20% difference so that you know that your offering is different than something else that's out there. Another reason why that this is important is because if you connect to market leaders, they can often tell you where there are blue ocean markets. They will say, hey, this is actually something that I would pursue, but I don't have the time to do it. You should go do that yourself. The guy that created GoDaddy didn't actually create it. If you know GoDaddy, the website hosting software, not my favorite one, but my actual first website or domain was bought through GoDaddy. The person who created that didn't think of the idea himself. He spoke with Bill Gates, and Bill Gates, in the height of running Microsoft, said, if I wasn't running this company, I would be doing that. That's what you should do. And sure enough, he did, and he made multiple millions, if I believe billions of dollars from it. And so that's where if you talk to someone who's way ahead of you, they'll tell you where they would go if they had the time, effort, and energy, and that's where you can go and make money. Same thing I experienced when I was working with one of my larger clients, Deal.ai. There's an ultra affluent man over there. He had told me a couple markets that he would attack and pursue if he could, and he had the time, but he was too focused on his AI company to be able to do that. And so that gives me either the choice to either go and attack them myself if I'm capable, or to maybe find or keep my eye cognizant of those opportunities, because that's where I know that I'll be able to strike it big if I can get into them. And if you're really lucky, you can just strike this into a partnership where if you want the guidance, take them up as a mentor, partner with them, actually become a division owner inside of their business and expand their company into that place they would like to, but they don't know how to. It's a great way to use somebody else's money to get the experience. Now let's talk about the 8th way that you can get into a blue ocean market. I'm going to cover this one really briefly because I already talked about it, but that is actually just to partner with the existing market leaders. If you can find yourself into a company and you can just partner with them and say, hey, I have this idea to grow this business. I want to grow something really similar. I see you guys are doing it. Let's work together. You can just collaborate and work with them to help them get it done. This is an incredibly effective strategy. It's pretty much how things work with a lot of my clients now. They want to do the high ticket info products, but they're not sure how to execute them or do any sales management. So that's where I can step in and just say, hey, I love this. I know how to do it. Let me take your product to high ticket and we'll do a revenue share. And that's how things work out. That's a great way to enter as a consultant or to find a place for yourself in the beginning, is just to partner with existing business owners that want to do the thing, but they don't have the time to. Now let's go into the 9th way that you can break into a blue ocean market. And this is actually to become the voice of the market. This is a lot of what influencers do. Similar to creating a market through using maybe a low ticket product and building one, partnering with influencers to tell people that, hey, there's actually an opportunity here, or you should use this thing, that this thing is like good and you should purchase it. This is another incredible way to create or break into a blue ocean market, is get someone else to vouch for you or get someone else to say it's legit. I actually had this phenomenon happen a little bit with my own product, the sales consulting product. I was known as an authority in the high ticket closer space in the industry that I was in because I had been in it so long. I had a strong enough reputation. I had interviewed some pretty credible people. People knew me as someone that could be trusted. And when I said, hey, there's this really good opportunity, which is fractional sales consulting, you guys should come do this thing, people sure enough listened to it. Their eyes, they took it. They paid attention to what I was doing, and some of them even came so forward and said, okay, sure, let's do it. And they transacted and bought to learn how to do it, and they got really good results. But that only came from the fact that not only did I create a market, but I was the voice of a market. I was someone to be trusted. I could vouch and speak for the validity from my own story, from my own perspective, and I had other people aligning with me saying that, hey, I'm not sure about it, but I believe Kaleb's true. You should follow him or follow his advice. I'd had this when I also worked with a really large influencer. There's an influencer that I worked with named Hamza Ahmed. We had launched Adonis School together, or Adonis Gang, I should say. Adonis Gang and Adonis School and Adonis Method, for those of you guys who know about that. Now, the beauty of working around that is that Hamza was an influencer. So when he said that, hey, this is something that you need, people would rock up and sure enough buy it. This is the power of just being an influencer. But you can use this to create markets or opportunities, or interview or get alongside these people and get them to share your ideas or share your perspective. Really, every market is only held together by the collective belief of the individuals that are in it. And so this is where if you can influence and shape that, you actually create a market to where people want to buy your thing. It's like how toothbrushing became a popular phenomenon. People didn't used to brush their teeth until a company, Pepsodent, hired a world-class marketer to make it known that people should wipe the film or scrub the film or the plaque off their teeth. They partnered with dentists, they partnered with studies, they did private research to be able to create enough anecdotes and proof for you to believe that it's actually scientifically proven and healthy for you to scrape the plaque off your teeth, and therefore you should go and buy toothpaste. People would run their tongue over their teeth and they'd feel if they're clean or not, and they would go out to the store and they would buy Pepsodent. That's the power of a world-class marketer, and that's another way that you can create a blue ocean market, is by creating it by telling people, aligning with the voices, or becoming a voice in the market that people should listen to. Now, the 10th and final way that you can break into a blue ocean market, and it kind of overlaps with the other one, is to leverage your personal experience. At the end of the day, people aren't buying a product, people are buying the brand, and before they buy the brand, they're buying the person who created the brand. They're buying you and your EXP. They're buying your story. If you have had a story or lived a similar experience that a lot of people have lived, you become that much more believable and a trusted person to provide them a solution. And this is also what you should use to differentiate yourself from competitors. Whether you're modeling something already else that's working, you should relate it back to your story and your worldview and sell it from your perspective so it feels and looks authentic. That is what makes it feel new. That can create a different experience. Brand it in the way that you feel is authentic. Package it in a way that you feel like makes the most sense. Do the things that your competitors aren't doing that you wish they did, and make that part of your story. I was a product user and I didn't like how it was, so I decided to make it better. Or there wasn't a product that existed, so I decided to create one. And it's that difference, it's that innovation, as I like to call it, that people love. People, the market rewards innovation and new ideas and things that are effective and better than what's already existing. It's why Lyft is different than Uber. Some people like the purple, some people like the difference in fares, some people like the different user interface. And so this point pretty much brings all the other ones home, is you need to be authentic and all the stuff that you're doing for it to be a blue ocean market. You will never win by just copying someone outright. But you can use all the principles and tactics I gave you, such as starting with what you know, which is also part of your experience. Avoid unfamiliar markets that you don't know about and you shouldn't speak from. Look at the market leaders, the people that already exist in the space. Look at the things they're not doing or have stopped doing that you might be able to enter. Create a market by, moving into a place that they would like to move into or should move into by either using your own dollars by creating strategic products to enter them, or partner with existing businesses to be able to move into them, or listen to them and understand more specifically how they would approach it. Use all of these to triangulate and stack them on top of each other to be able to break into these. And if you do things really well, you'll eventually get enough momentum to where you can be a voice or use the ideas of market leaders to vouch for you, and then keep everything within your own frame or your own worldview. There's a really good quote from Elon Musk's first wife, Justine, that goes, the world is actually made by Elon Musk. We just have the pleasure of living it. This was a similar anecdote that people that used to work at Apple when Steve Jobs was there would say, that there was a reality distortion field. When Jobs would enter the room, his frame and presence was so strong that you couldn't help but fall into his worldview and do and conform to the things that he said. That's the power that you want to have. There's a little nuanced, a finite pixie dust that goes into actually creating and shaping markets and getting what you want and making infinite amount of money. So you have to bend reality to fit your world. And so now that you have a solid understanding of how blue ocean opportunities work, remember, the key is to stop fighting for space in overcrowded markets. You want to stick to what you know, identify the gaps, and use your personal story to connect with your audience. The more strategically that you position yourself, the less competition that you will face, and the more opportunities that you will create. The blue ocean is out there. It's just waiting for you to find it. So take advantage of what you've learned today, apply it, and start building businesses where you can actually take the lead. You've got this. And if you found this video helpful, be sure to subscribe because I post others just like this, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss an upload. And if you have any questions or you want to share your own blue ocean strategy, drop it in the comments down below. I'll be reading them and responding personally. I'll see you guys in the next video.